Welcome back from the break, guys. Trust that you're well and that you've energized. In our segment now, we're going to look at plant hormones and their uses in agriculture. It's fascinating to understand how hormones have influenced the way food has been produced as well as our fruits. Having understood the functions of these hormones over the years, farmers have been able to use these hormones to stimulate the propagation of more fruit, to be able to harvest these fruit at the right time, as well as to promote better growth of fruit. So let's try and understand how have the understanding of hormones influenced the way we access fruit that are wholesome, that are fresh and ripe at the right time when we consume them. So it's important that we understand that plant hormones have played an extensive role in agriculture. They're used extensively in the production of food crop. Many of our food production has been influenced by hormones, and let's try and understand that now. So the formation of root in cuttings. Now, plants are often grown asexually by what we call cutting, and we've looked at cutting as a mechanism of asexual reproduction. Farmers often use this mechanism to propagate or to grow new plants quickly in a short span of time. The ability to be able to grow these effectively often determines or is dependent on the use of hormones. And so we call auxins used in the cutting as rooting hormones. So auxins can stimulate the development of roots, and you'll find that the roots are an important part of the success of a cutting growing. So cuttings develop bigger root systems after being dipped in an auxin containing hormone rooting powder. In this way, the plants are cloned cheaply and quickly. If we look at this image, you'll find that here's a little twig of a plant, and that's being dipped in rooting powder. And these hormone rooting powders are essentially a powder that contains auxins, and these auxins essentially allow for the quick production of meristematic tissue on the parts where the nodes have been created. So the use of hormones in the agricultural sector has influenced how quickly cuttings can grow into new plants. And if you think about that in terms of our food production, that has significantly influenced how quickly plants can be cultivated to grow into new independent plants. Folks, another use of hormones in agriculture would be in the production of seedless fruit. Now, how often have we eaten a fruit where the inconvenience of having a seed in your mouth actually puts you off that fruit? I notice that when you eat watermelons, often those large seeds and pips can really become an inconvenience. Okay, well, farmers have been able to use hormones to produce fruit that are seedless. It's amazing. I mean, that has increased the production of the fruit. It's increased the value of the fruit in terms of now people wanting to buy those. Let's understand what has been done. So what farmers do is that they spray some hormones onto the unpollinated flowers. And what happens is that due to the growth hormone present, it stimulates rapid development of the ovaries into the fruits. This means that without fertilization, the fruit now develops and grows into a seedless fruit. Guys, remember that fertilization will stimulate the formation of seeds because you've got the pollen landing. However, if you stimulate the growth of this fruit without the formation of seeds, you will end up with this fruit that has rapidly grown essentially without having the seeds. And so this has produced seedless fruit, and we see this often in the fruit that we consume. We've eaten seedless grapes, you've probably consumed seedless oranges, or oranges where the seeds are extremely small or remnants of which, and even in watermelons. And so you'll find that these are fruit that do not have seeds, and that's essentially because the growth hormone has stimulated the development of the ovary of this plant, producing a fruit which has no seeds. The ripening of fruit also is stimulated through hormones. And so you'll find that some plant hormones such as ethylene can be sprayed onto fruits to stimulate the ripening so that these fruits ripen at the same time and they all can be harvested simultaneously. So guys, you would have noticed that sometimes when you get to a store and if you're buying, for example, bananas, and bananas are often, if you look at them, when you buy them in the store, they appear green. And the reason why they're green is often the farmer that prepares these fruits and packages them, sends them to the store, hoping that when these are delivered in the store that they're just ripe and ready to be consumed. And so soon before these fruit are placed onto the delivery trucks, they are sprayed with a gas called ethylene gas. And that ethylene gas stimulates the ripening of the fruit. And so this is a freshly harvested banana, and you'll see that over a short period of time, having calculated how long this would take to ripen, these are applied. And so this is important in essentially producing fruit that can be, again as I mentioned, that can be harvested at the right time, simultaneously, because you now want to harvest a whole lot of fruit at the same time, package that, send them through towards, and then allow for them to mature and ripen at the same time. So that's amazing in terms of the access and availability of fruit. We also know that we can increase the size of the fruit. So grapes are often sprayed with gibberellins, and this will stimulate an increase in the size of the fruit. I'm sure you would have consumed or eaten grapes that sometimes are really small, and then sometimes you get a batch of grapes that are large. And that's because, one is because of the type of fruit, but also it's because of the use of hormones such as gibberellins. And spraying this makes the internodes of the plant bigger, which provides more space for the individual grapes to actually increase in size. And this is because there's an increase in air circulation, which also reduces the infection by pathogens such as fungi. So here you're seeing a large bunch of grapes, significantly larger, and that's because of the hormone that allows for the nodes between the seeds to be larger, and that allows for greater growth of the fruit, increasing the size of the fruit. And that's amazing how these bunches of grapes actually become significantly larger. We also know that there's hormones used to stimulate germination. So gibberellins are sprayed onto dormant seeds, and these will stop or interrupt the period of dormancy, causing a uniform germination. Now what does this mean? So before seeds are planted, a farmer will apply gibberellins onto these seeds. The gibberellins, as they would do, they would activate these seeds, they will wake them up from their state of dormancy. And this allows for all those seeds to germinate at the same time. So remember that seeds germinate when conditions are favorable. So if you need to increase production and if you need to time your time of germination, gibberellins are sprayed. And so this means that these seeds that have very different rhythms of germination can now all be synchronized so that they all germinate and grow at the same time, so that the harvesting of the crop can also be timed simultaneously. So an amazing way of being able to produce fruit and time their germination or even their harvesting. The prevention of premature abscission in fruit. It's important that we understand that sometimes the time of harvesting is also important. So you want to make sure that when you harvest your crop that all the plants have produced fruit around the same time, and that you maximize your time of harvesting, because that's also important in terms of production. So what has happened is that high auxin concentrations prevent the formation of the abscission layer in fruit stalks. Therefore, the spraying of the auxin delays abscission. So often fruits will tend to form and they will break off. So if you apply auxins onto an orchard, you will find that it delays the ripening of the fruit, and it means that when the auxin levels have decreased, all the fruit on that tree would ripen at the same time and be ready for harvesting. It also means that you're increasing the time of fruit development, which ensures larger fruit and timed harvesting. Harvesting dates can then be manipulated accordingly so that it can be all harvested simultaneously. What's also amazing is we know that plant hormones can be used in weed control. Farmers spend extensive amounts of money on controlling the invasion of weed. Weed obviously would be the growth of other herbs that invade agricultural lands and utilize the nutrients. So being able to control weed, which is unwanted growth, is important in increasing productivity. So having used hormones is an excellent example of how this can be used. So some synthetic herbicides, so weed killers, contain a high concentration of auxins. And amazingly, these auxins will accelerate the metabolism of these broadleaf dicotyledonous weeds. And so these plants that grow are often dicot plants that grow between our maize plants. And so being able to spray these auxins will stimulate their growth to a point that they grow extremely fast, unable to sustain their growth. And this extremely rapid growth can actually lead to them becoming weakened and dying. And so this will result in the farmers successfully removing the weeds and allowing for their monocot plants, such as your plants such as your wheat, your corn, and your oats, to grow successfully. And here's an image that shows you. So here you've got your mealy plants that are growing. In between that, you can see some of your dicot leaves, and these are significantly reduced. And that's because in this lane here, you can see that the farmer has applied auxins, and these have increased the growth to a point that they stop growing, and this leads to their natural degradation. So when we look at the hormones, these are extensively used in the cultivation of crop and harvesting.